Just a quick video on my Dualtron Thunder. I've had it for about 2 months now, and in that time thoroughly enjoyed riding it. However, I have made some modifications, some tweaks just to make it a little bit more comfortable and just to fix a few little niggly problems that I found along the way. So just added this headlight, which is solar powered, also acts as a power bank for mobile phones, and also has horn functionality. Really loud. So suspension wise, I have changed both suspension cartridges to softer ones. The standard is medium hard on the rear and medium on the front, and for my weight, which is about 65 kilos, I found that to be really stiff and the suspension to not actually move that much. So I've swapped to soft on the front and medium soft on the rear. I was going to go full soft front and rear, however was advised to go a little bit harder on the rear because that's where most of the weight is when you're riding, and I think that was a good move. I've also, when I did swap out the cartridges, I lowered the suspension. I decided to go 1 mark below the lowest setting. I read that some people were doing that and found it to be a bit of ride height, which I totally agree with. It's completely changed the handling of the scooter. It's much more stable and easy to mount and dismount when you're putting a foot down. The suspension is much softer than the standard suspension. Get a whole lot of travel now. The ride is much more supple. It has taken away some stability at top speed. I do get a little bit of wobble coming off the throttle at top speed. However, it's not that bad and it's actually quite manageable, so I'm not too worried about it. I do find that on really big bumps, the front guard can hit, just tap on there. It doesn't hit, just taps. So I don't think it's too much of a problem. However, if I do take the suspension apart, I may go to the lowest indicator on the markers there rather than where I am now, just given how soft the suspension is. It could probably do with a little bit more ride height. I also cut out a section of the board here. Reason I did that is because the suspension was so low. You can see that the edge of the board is pinching on the wire there. It was only when it was fully compressed. However, I just didn't like the thought of that, so I just cut this little section away there, and now it's free to move without too many issues. The only other modification I've done is the first time that I rode my Dualtron, I got stuck in the rain, of course, and I found that in taking the board off, some moisture had actually gotten between the base of the chassis and the board and made its way inside. So I also found the reason that was happening is because although there's a seal around the rim of the board itself was not perfectly flat, and it was leaving a slight gap on either side as it was slightly bent. I did try and straighten it out a bit, however I wasn't happy with the seal it was making still, and I decided to go and purchase a thicker foam style rubber and it's about 3mm to 4mm thick, and I removed the original seal and placed it between the board and the chassis around the whole edge, and it makes a much nicer seal now, so I don't have to be too concerned when I get caught in some rain or just puddles or things like that. The only other thing that I've mucked around with is, it seems to be pretty common, because I did read that a few people are experiencing this on Reddit. There's a cracking sound that comes from the stem, and it's really hard to sort of identify where it comes from. I've tightened this up really tight, and I actually have a different one coming from Russia that is a little bit wider and no longer has the quick access clamp, and just has 2 bolts to get a more secure fit on that. I think that'll help. However, you do lose the capability to fold it. But the cracking sound seems to come from here, and the stem sort of slots into this metal coupling here, and then gets bolted with a nut on the other side. And people say to take this off, pull it out, put some grease. I did that. It worked for a tiny little bit, and then the cracking came back. What I've done now is I actually took it out and wrapped it a couple of times with foil, because I noticed that there was a little bit of a gap there, and it wasn't fitting as tight as it could before you clamp down, which I think was causing the movement and the cracking sound. That seems to have fixed it quite well, so I'll have to see how it goes in time, but for now it looks to have solved the issue. I can really pull on the stem, and there's absolutely no sound at all, and the suspension actually moves quite a lot before. And yeah, it still doesn't make the sound. So the other part I have coming from Russia, this guy who does some custom fabrication, is a little stand for here, with some grip tape on it. This guy makes a cool looking one that you can rest your foot on in the back here. I do find myself resting the back of my foot on the rear guard, so I think that'll be a nice addition. And I also have a little handlebar slash light mount that can mount to either these bolts, these nuts, or there. And I guess it's a light mount, but I'm actually buying it and installing it for my son or sons to jump on and have somewhere good to hold on to. They're currently sort of holding on to here when I take them for a little ride, so that'll be a bit nicer for them to hold on to. So yeah, I'll make an update video when I have these parts installed and say how they went. Thanks guys.